So I would just recommend just doing like the simplest. Start with the simplest thing, you know, one solar panel, and then you know, there's positive and negative, and then that goes to a charge controller. And maybe 30 amp. You can find that. This is maybe like a 100 amp panel. And then the charge controller goes to a battery. So that will charge during the day. And the charge controller keeps it from discharging at nighttime, you know? So there's a thing here called a diode, a blocking diode. So if you can't find a charge controller, just put a blocking diode on the positive side so it does not drain it at night. So that's your battery, that's the whole setup. So now you're charging the battery. Now the battery is full, you want to use the battery. So also to this, same leads, positive and negative. You do, it's called an inverter. You can start with a 1,000-watt inverter. And this gives you like power just like you have at your house, you know? So it takes the direct current. This is direct current right here. DC, direct current. And it changes it to alternating current that you have in your home, like you plug in a fan. And this 1,000-watt inverter can power a fan, you know, my lights. LED lights are better, but they're more expensive. But you want LED lights, the electric fan, my small ref, like you have in your rooms here, the small, and that's all day. So all day, all night, it powers that for me.
For a 1,000.
For a 1,000-watt inverter. So what I do is I put four 80-watt. I have 4 80-watt panels together. Okay, but what you have to do is see this battery charges at 12 volts. This solar panel is already charging at like 16 volts. I think it's at 16 or 18. So you don't need to increase the voltage. What you need to do is increase the amps. Okay, each one of these is about 2 amps current. Okay, so if you want to increase voltage, you have to hook them up in series. Series increases the voltage. So positive, negative, and then to positive, and then negative to the next positive, negative to and then negative, and then that goes to your, you know, that goes to your charge controller, right? That's series. This is adds up the
voltage.
Adds up voltage. So you might get 16 or 18 times 4. That would be what, about 80 volts going. But you don't need that. You only need 12 volts. They're already charging at 12 volts. So what you need is for it to be hooked up in parallel. You need them to be hooked up in parallel. So you need to get connectors, so that's positive, negative. You want the positives to add up. Positive, negative. Positive, negative. Positive, negative. So you want all the positives together to be hooked up together. And then this is your positive side. And then you want all the negatives to be hooked up together. And then this is your negative side. So what happens there, you adds up the amps or current. So each one of these has 2 amps. So right here you're charging at like about 80 volts coming out at 2 amps. You don't need that. You want them to be charging at 16 volts times 2, 4, 6, 8 amps. You see that? You want to increase the amps. So that's why you need to hook them up into parallel. But just start with 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. And then you can experiment, you know? So the faster you want to charge, the more solar panels you need.
So that's the concept behind it.
And then the longer you want to go without charging, the more batteries you need. Longer
Charge.
to go without charging equals more batteries. Okay?
Yeah.
So my boat only has 4. They only have 4. That's less than one of these big solar panels they put on the roof. That's less than that. So I have 4 solar panels, not too many, because they charge just fine. It'll take a whole day to charge that battery. But I have many batteries. So even if it's a cloudy day, for maybe 3 days in a row, I have so many batteries on board. I have about 500 amp hours of batteries.
Amp hours.
So you can experiment with that. But it can go for, I can use 1 amp for 500 hours or 5 amps for 100 hours, you know? So you're using these costs, you know, this is your load. So the faster you want to charge those batteries, the more solar panels you need. I don't need to charge very fast. They can just charge all day long. But the longer I want to go without charging, I need more batteries. And then the last thing, the more power you want now, equals a bigger inverter.
Oh, okay. So now I get it.
If you want to just charge your laptop, you can have this inverter be 500 watts. 500 watt inverter just hooked up to one battery is fine. It might be 500 watt inverter, maybe I don't know, $50, $100 US, so about 5,000 pesos. But if you want like a refrigerator, you need at least 1,000 watts. If you want aircon, you're going to need at least 5,000 watt inverter, so you need a bigger inverter. If you want like a jacuzzi and all this electric car and everything, you need a bigger load now. If you want to operate power tools, that's a big load. You need more power now. You need a bigger inverter. But I think for your home, you experiment just with this.
Yeah.
You know, and add 1 solar panel and see if it changes the charging. You know, try a bigger inverter or not. Sell it, get the next one. But I don't think you would need, on my boat, I don't need anything more than a 5,000 watt inverter. So on my boat, I have a 5,000 watt inverter.
And what appliances do you use?
And just this, fan, lights, refrigerator. If you want to cook with it, you need a 5,000 watt inverter. And then I have 480 watt panels, so I only have 240 watt. And you want separate panels. You do not want one big 250 watt panel.
Oh, why?
Because that 250 watt panel will charge at 30 volts. You don't need higher volts. You need higher amps. So it's better to have smaller, maybe even 60 watt panels, and for them to add up, connect them in parallel. Them in parallel. You want the amps to add up, because that way it'll charge faster. So you want smaller panels, and just maybe 60, 80, 100 watt panels are fine. If it's over like 200 watts, maybe it might blow the charge controller. I've
Yeah.
had it because this charge controller can only handle 50 volts,
Mm-hmm.
and I've had that charge controller explode because I was using a 300 watt panel.
Oh my.
350 watt panel was charging my battery at 56 volts,
So that's
but
like,
this one can only handle like 30 or 40 volts.
So
So
that's-
it blew that up. Same thing with the inverter. You don't want to blow up your whole system. So it's better to go small and slowly. Okay, then there's two different types of inverters.
oh yeah.
There's one called pulse width modulated, and that is an inverter that turns on and you have a signal and then it turns off. Then it turns on and then it turns off. That's the representing the power wave. But then there's one called true sine wave inverter. This mimics exactly what's in your home. And so this is better for your electronics. You want to get a pure sine wave inverter or pure sine wave inverter or true sine wave inverter. They're more expensive, but it won't ruin your electronics.
Electronics.
With the pulse width modulator, you could use it, but you might find that it might affect your laptop or your cell phone that you paid so much money for. So it's better to pay more money and get a true sine wave inverter, and so that instead of paying more money, always having to replace your computer. But I still found, that's just a bit of a scare, but I've still been able to charge my laptop just fine. I would say it's not even that big of a scare. You can start off with a pulse width modulated inverter, and then just experiment with that. It's not that big of a fear that it will ruin your electronics.
Milo.
So that's what it is. One solar panel, one charge controller, one battery, and one inverter.
And like if I buy these materials at like a company, do they like have all these like wires?
Well, expensive is $1 a watt. Yeah, they would have all the wires.
Already, yeah.
You want probably number 10. Yeah. They have all the
Depending on
wires
the-
to
okay.
connect everything.
One last question. Like I think like you're very adept at like electronics and something. Like would you recommend like using MacBook or other laptops?
No, I use other laptops. I had an Asus.
Oh.
But yeah, this laptop's fine. The laptop looks fine.
But like
Oh, the Mac?
Mac.
I think Mac is overpriced. They might have better graphics, but the graphics on any laptop is fine. Nowadays, every laptop has come up to that technology. So yeah, you don't need to spend